Time now to talk about government grants, and we're going to welcome our panel. We'd like to welcome Luanne Smith, who is a senior program consultant in the Investment and Development Office with the Ontario Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Cultural Industries. Welcome, Luanne. Manfred is currently a Community Investment Director at the Ontario Trillium Foundation. Welcome, Manfred. Unfortunately, Julie de Bruzen, who is the Parliamentary Secretary of the Ministry of Canadian Heritage, who was supposed to be on our panel this morning, but the whip has called an emergency meeting and she had to be at the House of Parliament for a 10 o'clock call that was mandatory. So we're gonna hook up after the conference sometime in March, and we'll have Julia join us and talk about heritage. But we've got Martin Roy, who is the the CEO and president of FAME, and he can share a lot of the heritage information with us. Welcome, Martin. And finally, we've got Michael Harker, who is the executive director of the community research, and research is a key in some of the grant stuff. So welcome, everybody. Luanne, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to put you right on the hot spot. Last week, we shared some of your recipients of your granting opportunities. I know there was a little confusion around where they were and what they were for and stuff like that. So here's a great opportunity to share with everybody what you guys released last week, and then we can get into what's coming for 2021. Welcome, Luanne.
Thanks, Dave, for having me. And this is my favorite time of year, usually, when I get out from behind my desk and attend the conference. And I hope we return to that in person, because I get to talk to people who I talk to on the phone, meet them face to face. Couldn't be this year, but this conference has been great. It's been on while I work. So last week, the batch of recipients was announced for the Reconnect program. And the Reconnect program was developed this year to respond to some of the COVID situation. It played out that the Celebrate Ontario 2020 program this year was going along and on the verge of almost announcing when COVID hit. And we changed the approach of the program in response to COVID and the situation to take a more flexible approach to funding and supporting events in the hopes that they could come back again in the next year, this year, and in the following years. So we adjusted our list of eligible expenses, and recognizing that many events were moving to alternate programming, supported that as well, and canceled events, incurred expenses, and also included some overhead and administrative costs. Then in October, we announced the new Reconnect Festival and event program, and that program was meant to reconnect Ontarians with their communities, whether virtually or online. And of course, COVID and its unpredictability of the situation, the program was announced on October the 8th, and the next day the province went into some serious lockdown in different regions. And so we're trying to keep a pace with COVID developments. So last week's announcement was another batch of recipients. So in total, there's 114 of them. And we're now preparing, it was also announced, the launch of the new Reconnect 2021 Festival and Event Program, which will replace Celebrate Ontario this year, because we're still in the midst of COVID and the uncertainty. And it will launch on March 17th. So everybody will be notified of that who's applied to the program before. And you can also get your name on a notification list. But I know that, Dave, you typically send all your members notification of when our program launches. So,
and Luanne, just on that topic, for those that haven't been eligible before but may be eligible now, there's a way for them to, there will be a way for them to connect and get in on the program?
Oh, definitely. Well, the Reconnect, the 2021 version of the program will look much like the 2020 version with a few adjustments. So when the notification goes out, even if you haven't applied before, for some reason you weren't eligible, I mean, there's standard requirements every year from incorporation and being a legal body in Ontario, but the eligibility criteria don't change over much. And we have consultants across the province, tourism advisors, I should say, who are terrific resources. And every year we offer webinars in French and in English. And those will be available again and posted on ontario.ca under funding opportunities. So we're certainly available to consult.
So we've got a few questions in the chat here. Will there be sessions for the new Reconnect Ontario grant like there used to be for Celebrate?
That's what I'm talking about, is those webinars. So we anticipate offering at least 2 webinars. And I think those are really important. And the first step when the program comes out is for potential applicants to read the materials carefully and attend the sessions for some tips on how to apply. And just the webinars focus on what's important. It's a highly competitive program. There's just not enough dollars to go around to everybody, and everybody now is obviously in need of funding. So it behooves you to attend the webinar and find out as much as you can about the program, and then contact a ministry advisor.
And do you have any idea, like if it's launched on the 17th, how long are we going to have to fill out the forms and get the information into you?
So timelines have been all over the place with the uncertainty around COVID. The grant cycle is a bit different this year. And we know obviously it's a little late in coming, but we anticipate the application period may be a bit shorter, anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. So it's quite a tight timeline. And I know from feedback that our application is extensive and requires some work. So always our suggestion is start early and submit early. So 4 to 6 weeks, I would say.
Christine is asking, if I recall, we can only accept either Ontario Creates OMF or Celebrate Reconnect. Is that still the case?
That's right. Reconnect is almost a continuation of the Celebrate Ontario program, which may return. And there's also that restriction. If you are a recipient of OMF funding, Ontario Music Industry Fund funding, you cannot receive Reconnect funding for the same activity, the same event.
So, Luanne, you know, you guys ask specific questions and are looking for a specific, what's the important thing when filling out those grant applications? Because that information is so key. And I think sometimes people just rush to get them in without going through the detail required. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, and I'm pretty sure Michael Harker and his expertise is going to address some of those tips, maybe. But there's prompts in the application, specific prompts that are getting at information. So it's not good enough for somebody to just say, look at us, we've done such great things. We want to know details. Because the nature of the program is so competitive, there's not enough dollars to go around. We're an application-based program. So I've been to many events in the past and I know they're terrific, but if you can't tell the people who are reviewing your application about your event, where it's been, what it is, where it's going, then that's all we have to go on.
And Luanne, you know, we're all on the edge of our seats waiting for all of this information. Susan has a question. When will Reconnect Grant recipients 2021 be notified if their application is successful?
So the uncertainty around the COVID situation has caused delays in timing, and there's a lot of work going on. So we know the importance of early notification, especially for events that occur early in the fiscal year. And now this 2021 program will cover events from April the 1st, 2021 to March 31st, 2022. And we understand, because we've heard it even in optimal years where nothing extraneous is going on like COVID. So I can't confirm when you'd be notified. We understand the importance, and so much work goes on to get that out there. So as soon as possible.
And Tim, I think Luanne just answered your question in there about timeline. Luanne, you know, there's a lot of granting opportunities out there. Where would you suggest people look for in your ministry for opportunities that might help their festivals outside of the Reconnect program and including the Reconnect program?
So the program will be posted on ontario.ca under funding opportunities, along with other provincial funding programs. You want to keep your eye on that ontario.ca funding opportunities webpage. And the ministry still has a very active grants and awards link on the ministry website. So you want to check that out as well.
And Paul is asking, festivals will still be able to apply for August, October dates? for 2021, I'm assuming.
Yes, the 2021 program will cover from April 1st on to March 31st. And we anticipate, there's still going to be a huge emphasis on virtual programming. And then I think a heavy weighted third and fourth quarter, the later in the year fall events, in the hopes that things could happen in person again. And then lots of alternative programming, I imagine, will be put forth, like drive-ins and drive-through events that when they can happen, will be an opportunity for people to reconnect with their communities, but virtual. Yeah.
And Dan DeRusso is asking, are there any significant changes to the eligibility requirements for the grant you can share at this time?
I can't really share with certainty. We're racing towards that March 17th launch, but I do anticipate that it will look much the same as the 2020 program. So I don't anticipate significant changes.
Okay, thank you very much, Luanne. We'll loop back around. We appreciate that. I know everybody's always interested and waiting for a celebrate, and we know you're in a tough spot with timelines and deadlines. Appreciate you being as upfront as you are with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Manfred, I'm just going to jump over to you now to talk a little bit about Trillium and some of the opportunities that Trillium has for festivals and events in the communities, and different opportunities that some of our festivals and event people might not have thought about. Can you talk a little bit about your Trillium opportunities?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for the invitation. But I do have to start with congratulating all the festival and events organizers for your ongoing resiliency. It's great that the commitment's still there to make these events happen in different shapes and forms. We see the many challenges that the sector faces, the festival and events organizations, in terms of, and I guess at the top of the list would be revenue and cash flow, I think would be kind of one of the major pressure points. But the other thing we've seen is we've been pretty amazed at the capacity of organizations in your sector in terms of kind of switching and adapting and being creative in terms of their innovative approaches to everything from virtual opportunities to alternative delivery opportunities. And so when we work across Ontario, we still see the value and the importance of these activities, these events, their signature events. They put communities on the map. They not only build economic prosperity, but they also build tremendous community spirit at all different levels, at the regional level, at the provincial level, national level. So there's lots there to sink our teeth into. So what we've done is, so most of you are familiar with Trillium, I'm sure, in terms of in one form or another, but we did notice that the pandemic impact had the most significant impact on the loss of revenues. Reserves for organizations such as yours were being depleted, staffing changes, implications, cuts, losses. So there's lots happening in the sector, service disruption. So what we did was we did a significant pivot last year in terms of we suspended our traditional investment strategy, and we redirected 83 million into our Resilient Communities Fund. And so that fund was meant to support the recovery needs of the not-for-profit sector. That's our largest portfolio. So basically it supports all of the sectors: arts and culture, sports and rec, social services, and the environment. So and what we've tried to do is provide some flexibility in terms of the types of funding you could request. So the Resilient Community Fund last year was 83 million. We've announced round one. Those announcements were posted on our website a few months back. We're just completing round two, but we're going to be launching round three, which would be another $90 million in the Resilient Community Fund round three for this coming year. So there's opportunities there for festival and events organizers to identify in a number of ways. So some of the outcomes we're looking at is just they're focused on basic planning, helping these organizations plan for the future. So it could be strategic planning, could be marketing planning. We also are providing funding opportunities for things such as fund development strategies and plans. We're also realizing that some organizations are beyond the planning stage and are needing to adapt programs and services. So we're providing opportunities for that adaptive capacity. And most organizations right now are focused on the virtual aspect, but a number of them still realize that in-person is still an opportunity, that they can't drop off the map, that there will still be at some point in-person opportunities to connect with people, and that's an important aspect that we're not forgetting. We're also providing funds for equipment. Obviously, because of all the public health requirements, organizations need PPE, shielding, booths, those types of things to support any in-person activities that are still running. And then the last aspect of the Resilient Community Fund is the collaborative partnership aspect, because we see that many organizations by necessity are having to collaborate, work together from everything from knowledge sharing, data sharing, to maybe service delivery sharing. Maybe they merge or amalgamate on specific types of fairs or activities, or even marketing strategies collectively. So those are the types of things that the Resilient Community Fund provides supports around. And then we're just going to announce a new fund. It's just in the works. We're just waiting for the final sign off from the ministry. So again, this is provincial ministry funding that the ministry has asked Trillium to administer. So it's a $25 million community building fund. And this one is I think it will be of interest to the festival and events organizers, because it's very targeted. It's not open to all of our traditional sectors. It's focused on tourism, arts and culture, and sports and rec specifically. So that 25 million is focused in those specific areas. And basically it provides operating relief. We understand that COVID's been devastating on those specific sectors more than the social service sectors seem to have been able to adapt quicker, and there's more funding there, but the gap seems to be in the arts and culture, heritage, sports and rec areas and tourism areas. So the province has announced other funding such as Reconnect, but I think our funding complements and adds value to that those provincial dollars. Again, trying to make sure that the event and festival organizers remain viable, that there's opportunities for us to support everything from staffing costs to fixed costs. If you own facilities or manage facilities, obviously there's overhead, there's utility costs. So we're trying to support in those areas as well. And then there's the continued public health requirements and program adaptation pieces. So there's lots going on with Trillium right now, and we hope that that many of your members will be able to tap into what we have to offer.
And Manfred, I think an important thing to think about it is, we're all in this together, and a lot of our suppliers are being hit really hard as well. Will they be eligible for some of these community grants as well?
So the Resilient Community Fund and the Community Building Fund both are geared to the not-for-profit sector. So you have to either be registered as a not-for-profit or a charitable organization. The Resilient Community Fund, small municipalities are eligible. Municipalities under 20,000 population, First Nations band councils are eligible, and the Indigenous communities that they represent, tribal councils, would be eligible. For the Community Building Fund, it's a little bit more restrictive. It's again geared towards not-for-profits and charitable organizations. Municipalities aren't eligible for the Community Building Fund. That fund is more specifically geared toward those not-for-profits that are really struggling now, and trying to make sure we have a significant pool of monies available to that specific group of organizations.
And would service clubs fall into that not-for-profit as well?
Yeah, most service clubs are either registered as charities or registered provincially or nationally as incorporated bodies. Yeah, as not-for-profits. Yeah.
And just wondering, for those of us that have gotten a Reconnect grant, are we still eligible for the grants you're talking about through Trillium?
Yeah, we try to coordinate in terms of making sure there's not duplication of funding, but there's nothing to say that you can't apply to both funds. Yeah.
And where would people go to find your information? Is it housed in the same area as Luanne's on the government page? Yeah,
the government has a great website that we piggyback on. So again, Trillium would be listed there in terms of the Ontario Grants portal. But we also have a really good website at www.otf.ca. All the resources are there. We try to be very open and transparent. All of our different granting programs are listed. We show you the application form. We show you the assessment criteria. We explain the process in terms of the decision-making process. The best value, though, when you go to our website is to try to book a coaching appointment. So we have program managers across the province. Get your basic concept down on paper or in your computer, and have a conversation with one of our program managers, because they can coach you through the process of applying, what we're looking for, the specific requirements, the policies you have to adhere to. So that's our best value in terms of that one-on-one coaching. We also go around the province, and traditionally we had done in-person group clinics, but actually switching to digital platform in terms of our virtual clinics has actually been an improvement, because we're able to reach more people across the province in those clinics as well. So go to our website, check out the funds, and then book a coaching appointment, because you won't regret it.
And I'm just going to jump back over to Luanne for a quick question Paul's got in our chat here, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to, but he wants to know, will the outdoor and possible indoor attendance allowances be in each phase of opening? We need to calculate budget between ticket and funding ask. You know, I know that's all in the Ministry of Health's hands, and it's a moving target almost daily. So can you speak to that?
No, I actually, I'm afraid I can. You're right. It's the Ministry of Health and those guidelines. So I'm just gonna have to follow along with those guidelines.
Yeah, you know, it's a question all of us have, and unfortunately, we're all in the same boat, and we're trying to get that information. I know from as sector associations, what we're working with the government now on is getting those medical people involved in some of our roundtables, and so that we can ask direct question and get some answer. And you know, obviously their plates are full and there's a lot of stuff going on, but you know everybody that we realize the importance of that information, and we're doing our best to get it as well. And unfortunately, we're just going to have to sort of sit back and wait and see how this whole vaccination process unwinds, and how the variants go back and forth. I'm
sorry, I didn't have an answer for that.
Yeah, I figured so, but thank you. I just thought since it was geared towards you, I'd ask. Can I jump over to Martin Roy? Martin, I know you've got a presentation for us on the work you guys do in Ottawa and nationally for the festival and events world. I'm going to throw it over to you to run through your presentation to share with some of our members some of the work you guys are doing on behalf of the industry on the national level.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dave. Bonjour tout le monde. I won't do it in French, just maybe a short, but yeah, just I'm going to give you an idea of what we're doing with FAME. Actually, FAME is, as some of you already know, a coalition that works with the federal government with a membership of over 500 members across the country of all sizes in 9 provinces, and we work closely with Rémi. I have 2 hats, one in Quebec with the Regroupement des événements majeurs internationaux, and one on the federal scene with FAME. And so here's the membership of FAME. We also work with some associations as well as Rémi, as I just mentioned, but also in the Atlantic with the Atlantic Presenters Association, Event Atlantic, Événement Attraction Québec, and the Ottawa Fest Network. It's also important, before telling you where we're at with the federal government, to tell you what we gained in the last year. I think that the as you know, some of you have grants from Heritage, and that there was this sort of bonus to what we regularly get through phase 1 of the emergency fund. A lot of festivals got up to 25% bonus on what they usually get from this emergency fund that in total had $500 million, but only out of this $500 million, only $10 to $12 million went to festivals and events across the country. And just to remember that across Canada, 1,050 festivals and events are supported by Heritage, by both Canada Presentation Fund and Building Communities Through Arts and Heritage. And these funds in total, they used to be at $31 million back in 2018, and they went up to $42 million in 2019. And in 2020, there was $52 million for festivals and events that are supported through Heritage. So there was a quite nice jump, but the fear that we still have is to go back to $31 million eventually, because these reinvestment that were announced in the 2019 budget were only for 2 years. It was a 2-year investment, and they actually, the federal, in the fall economic statement, they announced that the cut, well, actually the reinvestment was extended for another year. But if nothing happened in 2022, we will go back to what we had in 2018. So that doesn't really make sense. So just a quick look on what we've submitted recently to the federal government through the pre-budget consultations in Ottawa. We came out with this 3-step roadmap to recovery for the festivals and events sector. And I'm going to go through this quickly. A quick look also on a timeline to recovery, and where you see different sources of revenue that we plan to have until 2022, return to normal. If you look at the yellow line, these are what we estimate self-generated revenues, and we know that this summer there might be a little bit of them, but not as usual, of course. And the wage subsidy is very important. You see it in red. We know that it's extended till June. They just announced, and I don't have the rate right now, but they just announced the rate from March to June. But what we're asking for is an extension of the wage subsidy for the hardest hit sectors in tourism and culture, so that we can eventually have the wage subsidy until the end of the year. And also there's this idea, and I'll go through it a bit later, of a new program to relaunch our sector. And we even came up with a name for it. We call it Celebrate Together Again Canada program. And as I said, it's the third pillar of the document. As I said, the first one is the wage subsidy. It's very important. We've estimated that 58% of festivals and events accessed to the wage subsidy. That was from a survey that we conducted in August in Ontario, Quebec, and in the Atlantic mostly. So 58%. If you don't have access to wage subsidy and you concluded that you were not eligible in-house, I suggest that you go and see specialists, because there are some little tricks. I mean, I'm not a fiscalist, but I understand that there are ways to access the program. And so I know that a few festivals went to KPMG or Deloitte or whatever, and they finally managed to access the program. So this is very important. And another thing is that we know that there's a challenge with seasonality, because we do have our revenues in a very short period, and that's a problem when it comes to wage subsidy. We also encourage, of course, municipalities and provinces to stay with us and to maintain or increase subsidies for festivals and events. There was an example that I really liked in Quebec City. The mayor, Régis Labaume, increased by 75% the support he gives to festivals and events year after year, because he really wants us to stay there and to be able to go through this storm. The second pillar, as I said, is the, we call it instill confidence in Canadians, and it's all this discussions that we're having with public health authorities. And we're asking for the Canadian government to do something about it, to come up with guidelines to help provinces, to help public health authorities. We think that we can do something this summer. We are not, of course, going to be able to have as many people, but we do have some original initiatives, and we're an industry of capable experts. We think that there are some things that we could do. We're inspired by some international initiatives, and you see two pictures there. One is from, well, this one is not from international, although it's from Abitibi-Témiscamingue in Quebec. It's quite far. And the one on the right is from Melbourne, Australia, where they came out with they came with platforms where they, in fact, you know, forced the 2 meters or 1 meters there, the distance between festival goers, and it's a way to have people in an event. And so I'm not giving up on in-presence events this summer, although we know that there are not going to be thousands of people. And but still, you know, we learned last Thursday that the French government already told the festivals and events there that they will authorize 5,000 people during summer, 5,000 seated people outdoor during the summer, and it's subject to change, but still festivals and events in France know exactly what they have to prepare now, and it's a good thing that there's predictability there. Last summer, we even came out with this. I wanted to show you that in Quebec, we came out with an idea, because here in Quebec, we had 250 as a maximum for festival goers, but we thought that we could add them in independent zones and go up to 1,000, you know, by adding 250 side by side. And the third pillar or part of the ask is to stimulate touristic and economic recovery by relaunching festivals and events. And we came out with this idea of a program that was put in place in 2009 for 2 years by the Conservative government. They invested $100 million in the festivals and events sector back then. It was after a pandemic, it was after an economic crisis. And so we're inspired by this program, and we're suggesting to come with an MTAP 2.0. As I said, we also came out with a name for it. And we think that it would be beneficial for not only the festivals and events, but also for tourism and economics, and that it would benefit to hotels, transportation, restaurants, and all this. Because we know from our studies, economic impact studies, that 33% of the festival goers' expenses go to restaurants, and 23% of their expense go to lodging. So it would have a greater impact in all the sectors that were hardly affected by the crisis. So just to conclude on this, I wanted to tell you that last week, the report of the Standing Committee on Finance came out, and that we're in. So it's a good sign. I'm not saying that it's a done deal for the budget, but if we're in the recommendations of the Standing Committee, it's a good thing. The recommendation number 55 and 112. And one of this is introducing a new program model after the Market Tourism Events Program with funding of $225 million over 3 years. So that's important to note. And we talked a lot with TIAC, and TIAC integrated our ask in their own tourism recovery plan. So this is also something good. So that's what I wanted to share for now.
Martin, thank you very much. I mean, for anybody in Ontario that's not accessing heritage, I think you're missing great opportunities. And, you know, the importance of connecting with your MPs and getting that information. Where would you suggest people go to look for those federal opportunities?
Well, you know, MPs can help you out and direct you to all these programs. I guess that it's a good start. And it's always important to keep a constant communication with your MP. As soon as he's elected, just send a congratulations letter and you know, engage on not only when you have a problem, but, you know, all the time, so that you can just, you know, it's a good time now to ask for a letter of support and all this. And so I strongly recommend a constant communication with your MP.
Thank you very much, Martin. Very, very great information to share with everybody. Michael, over to you. And, you know, research is so important with grants and the outcomes. You know, as a researcher who works with a lot of grant applications, can you share advice on how to integrate research and data in your application?
Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to share with that. I will take about 20 seconds here, if I may, to show off a prop, actually, because where I'm standing right now, just around the corner, this was on the wall, and I thought if I don't show this off now, I don't know when I will. But this is a plaque that I received in 1997 for being a panelist at the FEO conference in Ottawa. So, wow. Hard to believe how long I've been doing this, but I never thought I would end up doing panel discussions alongside people who are announcing grant programs. So I'm really privileged to be on this panel, and I'll try to add and share whatever I can. So yes, absolutely. I've been around research and events and grant applications for a very long time, and I think that they're all integrated and they have to be addressed. Now, we all fill out those forms, and you know, there's dozens of questions and big boxes, and quite often you'll see, and I've been there too, you've got the box and the box has 4 questions in it, and you're trying to answer everything, and some of the ones towards the end will sometimes say things like, please provide any relevant backup information or research or data or case studies or whatever. And it's easy to just decide, okay, well, I'm in a rush and I'm going to skip that because I don't have much anyway. But I can speak to why those boxes and questions exist on a grant application. And that's because I can just tell you from what I've seen on both sides that people who approve funding, whether it's government or corporates or even non-profits, a lot of times they really believe in your idea, or they have a gut feeling and they've got, you know, a lot of business experience and they want to approve your idea. But it can get stalled for a couple of reasons. I mean, sometimes there are just individuals who don't like to approve things unless it is backed up with data. And I see that all the time. And secondly, they sometimes need that data to take it to the next level. So maybe the decision maker is, you know, likes an idea, awesome idea, love it, love these people. They've got to take it to someone else now and explain why they think that it's going to work and should be funded. So you should always take advantage of those opportunities where it asks you to provide backup data or anything like that, because it's going to give you a stronger application. So, I mean, some advice on that. I have, you know, larger organizations that I've worked with that maybe do regular research and audience surveys would always have, you know, several questions that are designed specifically to collect data to put on future grant applications. And, you know, the really sophisticated ones would ask things like, here are a list of 10 things we might be considering to do at our organization, and which of these would you approve of or attend or spend money on or whatever. And then what that does is it provides you some pieces of data that you can put in those boxes when you're filling out the grant applications. And I think that gives you a much stronger application. Now, I don't want to be the research guy who just says, well, you know, go do some professional research and put it in your grant application. You don't have to be a huge organization with resources like that to include data in your application. You could, you could do a simple, if you have a great idea, and instead of just saying I have a great idea and ask for funding, you could, I mean, survey 100 or 200 people on your mailing list and ask them what they think of it. And if you come up with a nice results that you can put in your proposal, it sort of just checks the box for the people who review it and or maybe give you some better scoring. I mean, failing that, you could Google. I've done it myself. You know, I'm trying to fill out a box on an application form. I need supporting data. You Google it, you go to Stats Canada, you use something like Martin's deck that has lots of nice stats in it and adapt it. And even if you only put in a line or two, I think it makes a much stronger application. And I advise that all the time. So I guess the message is any data is better than no data. And I could go on. I have seen remarkable projects get approved on very small bits of data. And just, you know, tip from Michael, and I don't want to speak about any specific programs, but it is remarkable how it very seldom asks you to say, well, to describe where your data came from. I mean, sometimes it just says provide supporting data, put it in your application, and there's no place to put where the data came from. So even if you surveyed 100 people or you found a 10-year-old statistic or government statistic that you can put in there to support your case, then put it in. And if anybody ever asks you where it came from, you can answer them then. So anyway, those are my tips from the data side.
Michael, Luanne touched on it, and we talked about it in our last session with our sponsorship panel. And it's really the importance of storytelling and knowing your story and telling your story properly. You know, like you said, with research, knowing your demographic and knowing how you can use that demographic to build on whatever festival and event you're looking at. Because quite often that's what the granting bodies are looking for, is growth opportunities and how to increase tourism dollars and everything else spent in the communities. You know, it's important that the outcome, there's a benefit for all.
Well, and I agree with you. And I think I mean, we're in the festivals and events and arts industry, and I'm imagining that most of us are good storytellers, and you have to be. But I find that, you know, if you're putting in an application with 100 other great storytellers, I would advise that you have great stories to tell and back it with data. And frankly, if you're good at such things, you can turn the data into part of the story, and without it just being sort of some raw statistics in point form at the end. But I've always found that and I'll take it back to the same. There are lots of decision makers who are uncomfortable approving things unless it's backed by data. And I'm not saying it has to be backed by a ton of data or even the greatest data. Sometimes it's just, oh, great idea, love it, love the idea, love the organization. Oh, there's data that supports it, and that just takes you the next step into the approval stage versus not having it at all. So I think it's a mistake especially when it has those, and you know the way those boxes are phrased when you fill out grant applications, and there are 4 or 5 questions, in a big paragraph, and you've got an 1,000-word maximum or whatever, and it's easy to just say, well, we don't really have any data, but we got a great idea, so let's skip that part. But no, always throw in a sentence or two with some statistics or percentages or that can help your case.
And the other thing is, if they're asking for 1,000 words, they want information. They don't want a quick, 1 sentence or 2 sentence paragraph. They want that detail. They want that data. They want that research to make an informed decision. I'm going to just jump back around the horn just for final thoughts. We've got about 3 minutes here to wrap up. So just really quick, Luanne, over to you for last minute work from the Reconnect program.
Thanks, Dave. So I'd say echo Michael's thoughts. Data is important, and rationale, and filling in as much information as you can that's relevant and that tells the story. There's resources out there, including, as Manfred said, his consultants out across the province and our tourism advisors. Take advantage, whatever grant program you're applying to. I mean, the worst you can hear is no, we won't consult with you, but the programs I know, you can have consultations with applicants, so that's terrific. And then feedback from festivals and events is always important to us because it helps inform following year's programs. So keep that coming, including success stories, especially during this strange time where virtual events are really taking hold. So we're interested in that kind of information. So that's about it. Ask questions. It's competitive. Start an application early, and attend a webinar when it becomes available, I recommend. But thanks for having me.
Thanks very much, Luanne. Always appreciate it. Manfred, last thoughts from Trillium?
I think it's mostly been said, but just piggybacking on Michael's comments, yeah, there is a balance between the art and science of grant making, and in terms of the storytelling aspect, I think brings the emotion and the compelling kind of interest in the application or the potential impact of your project, but always back it up with a little bit of research, a little bit of data to kind of validate your point. And then again, tap into your resources, the provincial government, community foundations, wherever you're tapping into sources, federal government, heritage. There's a wealth of experience there, program manager staff, that their job is to support you and to give you the tools and access to the right information, so you have a decent opportunity to be successful. So don't forget, don't be shy, call and book an appointment.
Thank you very much, Manfred. Martin, final word from Frame. Thank you very much for that detailed information. I think there's a lot of great information there for all of our members. And
well, thank you, Dave. I wrote in the chat that details are about to come regarding the $1 million that was in the economic statement, and I like what I heard. I mean, data is the key. Build your case. Stop complaining. Just build a case with data, and and it really helps. I do this all the time. I show them the numbers, and they really like it or not. But still, it's what you have to do.
Thank you very much. And Michael, final word from you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, well, I'll just add in that you introduced me as being with community researchers, but most people here know me from the event company that I started in the 90s called Enigma Research, which still exists. But I can tell you that the kind of work that we did, and our bread and butter, was for large live events that needed to measure their economic impact. And in the summer, we decided that wouldn't be coming back for a while. So I still think that that's the case. So what did we do? We adapted, and I've dusted off another idea I had from years ago to start a nonprofit research organization. And frankly, I'm doing that because I think the name of the game for the next little while will be government funding in Ontario and Canada, and we'll be more positioned to get that kind of clientele. I would advise anyone here, if you're not already doubling down on grant applications, do it. I mean, if you've got somebody writing grants full-time, you know, get a second person to write grants full-time, because, or look outside your sector. I mean, I'm applying for a skills development grant. I never thought that I would do anything like that a year ago, but you've got to look around and see how your organization can fit in the countless grant programs that are out there right now. So go for it.
Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate it. A lot of great information. And I know it's tough to give information that we don't have right at hand, and appreciate the honesty and the information that you have shared with our members.